What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the game on Paxate Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. I am not joining you from a crowded hotel walking bridge this time, so that's great. But today we're going to talk about breaking into web apps, pen testing web apps. We have Gavin with us. He's going to show us some really cool stuff here in a bit. Before we do that, let me do some housekeeping. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. If you're watching and you want to comment, make sure you're on Paxate's YouTube. That's youtube.com/PaxateCloud. You'll see the live stream there. Our producers can actually see those comments and we can pull them up on the screen and have a two-way discussion in real time. And I think that's it. Well, don't forget to sign up for Paxate Beyond. And I think that's it. Let's bring on Matt.
Dom, do they fine you if you miss any of those? Like if you miss one of those bullets, do they like penalize you in some form?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think it comes out of my royalties. Yeah.
It probably does. It probably does. Man, I'm excited about this episode for a number of reasons. Things are good. I am coming to you from a crowded hotel, but not in the hallway, obviously. But I'm in San Diego. It's beautiful out. I actually have the harbor right behind me. I wanted to be selfish and not share that view, or I'm not good enough with a camera. One of the two. But yeah, glad to be here. This one's going to be, so if you're here for this one for two reasons. Number one, Gavin's brilliant, and he's great at taking things that we have to expose, right? At least if you're not applying ZT principles or if you're working with the general public, we make applications, we make web applications, and we have to expose them out to the internet for people to use them. That's how the inner tubes work, right? And so what we have are our class of pen testers that work on application pen testing, and they try to pick apart those things and take advantage of some of the OWASP top 10 challenges, right, that we see. But it's not often you have someone that's really good at manipulating those and also really, really good at explaining things. So I want to give you a quick snippet to get your appetites wet of just how this guy is. Let's go ahead and roll the clip.
Let's hop back to the proxy tab, and we see this get rest memories. If we look at the response, we can start to scroll down, and we see some of the things that we would expect to see, right? So we have the image path, we have a caption, but we also see something that's a little extraneous. For each image that's uploaded to the photo wall, we have the user object, which includes a person's user ID. In this case, this is 13, their username, their email, their password hash, which is a big no-no. And it also looks like this is an MD5 hash, which is also a no-no. We have their role, which is deluxe, and we have their deluxe token. So here's a bunch of information that we can essentially steal from the application about its users. If we continue to scroll down, we can see other users who have uploaded things. So we have here user ID 4, user ID 21. So this is user enumeration and definitely a problem.
All right. Well, that was scary. I think we're going to get to see some more of that. But yeah, well, internet's a scary place, and it's a scary thing to put things on,
especially if you don't protect them properly. So let's hear some wise advice from Robin Harris, and then we're going to go take a look at what application pen testing looks like by using Juice Shop. And for many of you that are not familiar, that's an awesome platform that's got tons of these type of vulnerabilities that are fun to look at. So, all right, let's roll Robin Harris, and we'll come back with Gavin.
Are you ready?
I want to talk to you about AI, specifically the over-reliance on AI. Because a lot of people are buying into the idea that AI is going to be so exceptional and so perfect that people without skills can now do the same quality of work that people with skills can do. And I'm going to share with you two stories and lessons learned. First story is about mushroom foraging. There is a book on Amazon, and it was apparent that it was created with AI because they stole the look and feel of a legitimate expert's book on Amazon. It looks almost exactly like this person's book. It's a fictitious person. You can't find any social media history. You can't find any links, any posts. Like this person just spontaneously emerged. Well, it actually turned out that some of the information in the book was not correct. And a family used this book to create meals. And guess what? Because it wasn't accurate, the family ended up getting poisoned. So this is an example of where AI can create something that looks accurate, but it's not accurate. And there was also an incident with a chatbot, airlines. Somebody was requesting information about refund because of bereavement, and the chatbot provided the wrong information. And they didn't want to refund the ticket. And they went to court. And the court said, sorry, your chatbot gave this information, and therefore you have to honor it and refund the ticket. Here's my own experience. So I was generating a document for ISO with a list of some artifacts, and I wanted to tie it to the correct clauses. First of all, it kept pulling in 2013 ISO, even when I specifically said reference 2022 ISO. So I kept fooling with the prompt, and I finally got ISO 27001, 2022 clauses and controls. And then I was like, wait a minute, something looks weird here. And I went and looked at it, and I was like, what the heck? Almost every one of the controls it mapped to was incorrect. I had to go and manually go back through the standard and get every single one of those controls. Now, had I not known and had some understanding of how AI works, I might have just taken that document as is and published it, and I'd had a problem. So the lesson here is that what you're going to save in production time, you're going to have to add some of that time back to validate. And depending on the risk involved of missing something, AI may not be the tool that you want to use for the job. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And that's just a consideration individuals have to weigh in on. And there's got to be a level of maturity and wisdom in how we use these tools, and to make sure we use them appropriately, because number one, it can cost people lives, it can cost companies money, and it can cause us to publish inaccurate information.
Time to level up. Level up.
You know, I think in life we always adopt tools because they're the next thing. We throw them out there, and we don't often think about the considerations of those decisions, as Robin kind of just went through. But that also applies in throwing out a website and things that we're going to go make tons of money on
Indeed.
without necessarily doing the things to secure it. So I think I'm super, super excited to have Gavin here. Gavin, do you mind introducing yourself to everybody and tell us what you do, man?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Gavin Klondike. I'm the principal security consultant over at GlitchSecure. I also run the YouTube channel NetSec Explained, where I take complex topics like this and explain them in an easy to understand way.
Fantastic. So you brought this up, and you do application pen testing. What do you want to cover? This is kind of your classroom. I'm going to have the con is yours at this point, and Dom and I will just be here to look pretty and ask questions. So roll with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, perfect. So what I want to cover is how a senior pen tester looks at applications. There's a lot of content that already exists out there. There's even some certifications about how to pen test or exploit an application. So they'll talk about things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, CSRF, you name it. But the thing that they always miss is how to actually find these issues. And so what I want to focus on is how a senior approaches a new application. So to kind of briefly go over what I have in mind for our agenda is I want us to talk about kind of a new way of thinking about hacking. It's not just about finding the cool new exploit or being able to exploit it. It's how do you actually approach an application? And then more to the point, what is it we're trying to do when we're performing bug hunting? So when you start to turn this into a career or you start to automate some of these processes, how would you hack 1,000 applications? If that's, the scope that you're dealing with. So you can't just perform a la carte services all across the board. You need to actually start to build a system and a process behind it.
Sure.
And then this is where I get into things like application mapping and then how you prioritize targets so that you find the most relevant bugs as quickly as possible. So I take a lot of inspiration from Simon Sinek's The Golden Circle. If you
Sure.
haven't seen his famous TED Talk, he talks about this circle of how we approach or how we approach business. And I kind of transferred this idea onto application testing. So a lot of people kind of know what they're trying to do. So that's going to be your, again, cross-site scripting, CSRF, uh,
iDoors, blah, blah,
SQL
blah.
injection, iDoors, exactly. But they don't always understand how they can find these things. I've done a lot of interviews for people, and it's always interesting to see how many will say, "Oh, I'll just try to do a SQL injection." It's like, okay, well, that's
Where?
not going
What's
to
the
work
entry
here. What
point?
would that actually look
How?
like?
What are you
Right?
trying to
What's
target?
the entry point? One of my interviews, I would constantly ask people, okay, you have a brand new application, you've created an account. How would you escalate to an admin? What are the processes to do that? There's only about a handful of ways to take over an admin account. And then they would get really stumped. They would say, oh, I'll try SQL injection. Okay, that doesn't work. What else can you try? I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about how we can approach testing. And then more to the point, we want to find cool bugs because we want to find cool bugs, but why do clients hire us? Why are we finding bugs? Why do we have a job? And so a lot of people really don't understand that particular concept. So I kind of want to go over some of that info.
And the premise
So,
of Simon
mhm.
Sinek's book is that it starts with why, right? And at least the beginnings of that is it starts with why, right? So if you understand the why, then the what and the how become easier to translate. Is that similar in this golden circle argument as well?
Exactly. Once you understand why you're doing your testing and then how to approach your testing, then the what becomes incredibly easy. So
Gotcha.
recently I was doing some QA for a pen tester of mine, and he found cross-site scripting. He can get an alert box. And it's like, okay, cool. We have an alert box, but what can you actually do with that, right? Alert box is really nice and fancy, but can you change the email address and perform account takeover? Can you steal somebody's session information? And it turns out that the way that the application was built, it was kind of sandboxed in its own little section. And so even though you had cross-site scripting in there, you couldn't actually do anything
And it
with
wasn't a material
So,
finding. It was
right.
just a finding of something that you couldn't exfil data. You couldn't read a directory. There wasn't anything to escape from. And so therefore it was a bug, but not a critical
Yep.
finding. Is that a fair way to say it, Gavin, in that regard?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in some cases, it's not even a bug. If you look at something like
Okay.
Blogger, I know Live Overflow talked about this really well. If you look at something like Blogger, it's essentially HTML injection as a service. You can inject your own HTML, you can inject your own JavaScript, right? So that would be your cross-site scripting. But
Yeah.
everything's segmented off so that even though you have JavaScript, you can't actually do anything with it. And so that's kind of where I think a lot of people get stuck. So I want to start real briefly. Like, what is app testing? Why do clients hire us? What are we trying to do? Uh, I kind of think of app testing as we are hunting bugs, right? We're exterminators. So somebody says, I want to make sure there are no bugs in my application. That's very similar to saying, I want to make sure there are no bugs in my apartment. And so us as exterminators, bug hunters, we go in, we take a look, we turn around and we say, yep, there's no bugs in your apartment. Here's a nice little report. Pay me, $200. And they'll say, wait a second. Where did you actually look? Did you look in the kitchen? Did you look in the bedroom? Did you look in the living room? Did you look in the bathroom? Okay, let me go back. And so you go back in, you come back out, you have a nice little checklist. Yep, check the living room, check the kitchen, check the bedroom, check the bathroom. Okay, but where in those locations did you look? Did you look in the sink? Did you look under the drain? Did you look behind the toilet? Did you look under the cabinets? Did
I
you
feel
look
like I'm
behind the
talking to my
fridge?
kid
Did
about
you look
cleaning
under
the
the
house,
bed?
man. Like this is
Right, yeah. So you know. And so as you continue to drill deeper and deeper into this topic, you start to realize like, oh, I'm not looking for, the cool exploit. I'm looking for all the exploits. And so you need a process to kind of go about doing that. So I break things down into TTPs. If you've heard of this as a military term, I kind of took that and made it into my own. And so it stands for tools, techniques, and procedures. So the technique is what you're trying to do. So that's going to be your cross-site scripting, your SQL injection. The tool is what's going to let you do it or do it faster. So it's going to be your burp suite, your nmap, your SQL map. But it's the procedure that lets you kind of fit all of it into the broader life cycle. And so that's where a lot of people kind of miss. So that's also what I want to focus on today. So now that we've kind of gone over why do we do pen testing, what do we do, right? That's your cross-site scripting SQL injection. So let's talk about how to actually go about and find bugs in an application. So I'm just going to pivot over here. Now, as you mentioned earlier, I am going to use Juice Shop. The reason why I like using Juice Shop, this is the same thing that I take all of my juniors and interns through, just to kind of show them my process. The reason why I like to use Juice Shop is because it's very low effort. There's a lot of bugs to find for sure. And it's something that you can do at home. So instead of me showing you a cool application or, a bug bounty target that, hey, we found something really cool, you have no ability to practice. So I want to give you something instead of just stand up here and lecture.
And I'd also add, if you're
mhm.
wanting to do the things that Gavin and Dom and I have showed over the last couple of weeks, go to tryhackme.com. I don't have an affiliate link. I'm not going to get paid. Go to tryhackme.com, pay the $14.99 a month, and you'll get access to Juice Shop with a ready attack box, all the things you might need, and a lot of guidance and a lot of YouTube videos contextualized around those videos. So go learn adversarial things so that you can understand them better. And to your point, Gavin, having the ability to practice is extremely valuable and on a whim's notice, right? On a moment's notice.
Exactly. I would also recommend the Portswigger Web Security Academy. They do a really good job of breaking down different bugs and then different mitigation techniques that developers try, but also get very wrong. So if you want to learn about the techniques and build up a library of those skills, I highly recommend the Portswigger Web Academy for that reason. Awesome. So when I test an application, what you want to do is kind of go through the application in multiple phases. Now, Juice Shop is really easy, right? Like this is a simple e-commerce platform. I have account information, orders. I can look at reviews of products. We've used Amazon. We've used other e-commerce platforms before. But if I was to give you an application like a system that monitors oil pipelines and controls those, you might not be as familiar. So you always want to go through the application like a regular user. When you're talking to clients, if you have that opportunity, you ask for something like an application walkthrough. And that application walkthrough is going to kind of show you how a regular uses the application. I also highly recommend just log in, create an account, and just play with the application to understand what it does. I'm not going to go through that process here. We kind of already know what this does. So the second phase, you want to go through and actually do your application mapping. And so this is where you want to go into detail and try to understand the application better than the developers do in order to find the flaws that they put in there in the first place.
So and by that,
what I always like
how
to do,
one component hands off to another component, where it calls it, which pieces rely on what. Is that what you mean by mapping?
Exactly. So what are the API calls? If there's API calls, what information is being passed to the application? How does it make certain decisions? So for example, how does it know who I am? Is it pulling that off of the token, or am I sending my user ID with a request? Can I change that user ID? Can I look at my own profile and it says, hey, you're profile number 26. Cool. What if I ask for profile number 25 or profile number 24? But the bottom line is you want to click on everything. So I'm going to use Burp Community Edition. Again, this is freely available on Portswigger. I use this setup so that you can practice along with the video, or you can go home and try a couple different things on your own. I'm not using any specialty tools or anything that you wouldn't have access to at home. So I always open up the HTTP history as I'm going through the application. So I'm going to go ahead and just log out first. And I see a bunch of these different API calls. We're going to ignore them for now. And in fact, one of the things that I like to do is highlight. So I'll right click, I'll select highlight, and I'll kind of gray this out so that I know if I click on anything, it's because I clicked on it. And if there's multiple requests, because sometimes you'll see that in applications, I know that they're all related to that same piece.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead, take a look at this banana juice. We see that we get this who am I request. And this who am I request, because I'm not logged in anymore, it has no user information. We see product 6 reviews, so we can easily assume that this banana juice is product number 6. Maybe there's product number 5, product number 4. But in this GET request, so usually you'll see a GET, POST, PUT, and DELETE. GET request retrieves information. POST lets me update information. POST lets me create information. PUT lets me update information. And then DELETE obviously lets me delete information. So I see here in the application, I have one review. It says Fry liked it too. And then here off to the side, we see Fry liked it too. And we see this vendor juice.shop. So nothing too crazy, just trying to understand how the application works. If I go to customer feedback, we get
And do you mainly make
some
a mental
information.
note of that yourself, or do you actually have a structure in which you write that down? Is it mostly in your head, unless you get into really complex applications?
Yeah, so great question. The answer is both. I start off with a mental note, but I'll show you how to build out a formal application map that'll really help you collect a lot of information in guiding your testing and giving you some ideas of where to look next for, the next big thing. I also use this with my juniors. So if I need to delegate pieces of an application, I can give that to them. They build the application map, they give that back to me, and then I'll notice things that they might not notice and say, hey, this looks like something where you would want to do these tests. Why did you not do these tests yet? Let's dig into this a little bit more and try to share with you how I identified that. And so that when you see something like this again, you know to look there. So let's go ahead and create some content, and then I'll show you the bigger application map. So this is customer feedback form, so I can add in, hi, this is my feedback, and then we have a rating, and then at the bottom, a little CAPTCHA, right? So 10 minus 4 minus 8, that should be -2. And I'll go ahead and click submit. So we see a couple things. This post request is what I had actually submitted. And so we have the CAPTCHA ID. So that's probably, there's multiple forms of CAPTCHA. And so what that ID will do is, communicate to the browser that this, or communicate to the server that this is the CAPTCHA that I'm trying to solve. This is my answer to that CAPTCHA. And then here is my comment. We see this name anonymous. So already off the bat, I'm trying to think, how can I mess with some of this? Can I bypass the CAPTCHA? Can I maybe delete this? Will it still let me post? That actually happens in a lot of applications. You'd be surprised. This anonymous would be my my name. So can I change that to somebody else's name? Can I spoof a feedback, or can I spoof a review? Another thing is, whenever I see a text input, I would try to do something like a blind SQL injection. So I put in the rating 2. Now we also see this CAPTCHA. So get CAPTCHA, and we see CAPTCHA ID, we see the CAPTCHA value, but we also see this has an answer already. So
Nice.
you're giving me a CAPTCHA, but you're also giving me the answer to that CAPTCHA. So now there's no reason for that CAPTCHA anymore. CAPTCHAs are usually to stop me from being able to automate or script certain things. And so now I can just pull that information from the CAPTCHA, or maybe I can do something like replay this CAPTCHA ID. So I can right click, send a repeater. And then I always like to get a base request. So I'll click send. So this is going to go ahead. It says success. It created a new feedback. And so that's feedback 10. Click it again. We now see feedback 11. But what if I change this rating to something like -2? Will that still be accepted? And we see that it is. So already we're seeing, improper data validation, data sanitization, and things like that. So let's go back through kind of our application map. So I can click on something like photo wall. So photo wall, here's that who am I, 302 or 304 not modified. It's because there's some caching built into the application. We see application configuration. Now this is something you wouldn't see unless you are actually looking for it. So let's take a look, send that to repeater. And then this if none match is that caching code. So I'll just go ahead, delete that, and I'll click send. So now here's a bunch of application configuration information that probably shouldn't be shown back to the regular user. So this is something that I would want to take a look at and see, is there any sensitive information in there? I always wind up with 1,000 repeater tabs. So having a system for organizing your repeater tabs helps a lot. If I'm looking for something, I'll do like an @ symbol. If I found a finding, I'll do a star so that, at the end when I write my report, I can automatically figure out which repeater tabs have all of the identified
Pages you need
issues.
pictures
And then
from.
if there's no finding, I'll have something like a pound so that I know, hey, I did this test, no findings resulted. So I'll do look for sensitive info.
Is the pound really more of a mental moniker for you, because you're probably not going to revisit the pounds nor summate whether you've done all the pounds,
Right.
right? So is that just more for you to
Yep.
mentally cathartically say, I've done this one already?
Exactly. I find, and so this is just me. You can use whatever symbols you find helpful. This is just something that I do because, again, I'll have 100 repeater tabs, and it'll give me a lot of problems if they're just named, or even if they're only numbered. Right? I don't know the difference between repeater tab 47 and 83. So I always try to add in notes like this. I also noticed that not a lot of people know that you can do this, so
you can
I
just
kind of want to
click
show
and
that off
rename it.
for you all.
Yeah. I'm not
you
going
can
to
just-
lie.
I wish I
I
could do that
actually
in Chrome,
didn't
man.
know.
That would be nice.
So straight up, Gavin, I did not know. So I'm just going to tell it myself. Matt Lee learned that today. That's awesome.
Perfect. I mean, that's my goal. Just showing you stuff that you didn't know. Again, I feel like too many people go over, hey, here's how you exploit Juice Shop, or here's how you, again, find cross-site scripting, SQL injection, things like that. But they don't really go over, the process. How do you actually go through and find all of these issues? So if we look at, and this is kind of part of that clip, if we look at this memories, this is what was actually loading the image page. So we can see, here's where the images are stored. Here's a caption of the image. So if I move this back over, right, we see Zashi will need 4 legs. We have magnificent. So all that information is here in the API that's being returned. But we also see this thing, and this I get really excited about. This is the user object. This is how I, as a user, am being represented in the database. So once I find a user object, it kind of takes a lot of the guesswork out of things. Now, this one for Juice Shop, it's on purpose vulnerable, and it gives you way more information. Like, for example, passwords, you'll almost never see that in an application. They'll have something like a TOTP secret. You'll almost never see that in an application.
In a real
I've also
app.
seen it. But this one also gives you your role. And so once I know what the different roles are, I can kind of start to build out an idea of, hey, what if I try to change my role, or who should I try to escalate as? Sometimes admins are not called admins. Sometimes they're called super user, or they're called something else.
Or
so I would want to try and guess those. Exactly.
And to your
maybe
point,
there's
you can
different
enumerate
types of
more and
users.
more of these comments to get that aspect, right? Because that is one of you were doing, is like you can look at more of these to go, well, there's deluxe, this one's admin, this one's right. So you can start getting that enumeration as you're doing this in your mapping.
Exactly. But this is going to be very important from an unauthenticated standpoint. So let me just go ahead and create a little bit more information. So if I give customer feedback, does that return back to the user? So I would look for something like that. It actually does. It's in this About Us page. So we can see, different customer reviews. I can move the tabs over, and eventually we'll come across the one that I had put in. We see that names are put in here. This is the one that I had put in. Hi, this is my feedback with the 2-star review. I did it a couple of times. And so we can see that information. So that's always good to just kind of understand where are the inputs, where are the outputs, how are they being represented. Since this is being returned back to the user, I would try to do something like cross-site scripting. But let me show you something a little bit more advanced. So if I go to account and I go to create something, I'm going to show you what's called mass assignment. Now, mass assignment is kind of a symptom of when developers get a little lazy. So instead of updating explicitly the values they expect you to update, what if they just say, hey, I want you to be able to update any value, but I'm going to limit it on the client side? Well, that's really problematic, because what if I go to update my email address or my password and I say, oh, also, while I'm here, I might as well update my role. So we'll see what that looks like in a second. So I'm going to say I'm not yet a customer. I'm going to go ahead and create an account. I'm just doing ASDF.
While he's doing that, we do have a comment from a user on YouTube. I haven't filtered this, so let's see what we got. It says, when editing the methods from get to post, put etc, do you just try random methods to see if it gives you something?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't actually. The reason why is because get, post, put, and delete tend to have a specific purpose. And so if I know what this API endpoint is supposed to do, then I'll try and make, a little bit of an edit on that. So I'm not going to try a delete on something that's doing a post, simply because, one, I'm not always trying to delete stuff, but two, it might just fail and it's kind of wasting my time. But there are some fuzzers that'll do that. There are opportunities where somebody will use the same application API for different things. So if I have /user/profile and I have a get, then it'll get my profile information. But if I do a post, then it'll create a profile. Or if I do a patch or a put, it'll update that profile. So I rather see that in the application so that I know that that's what the application is doing, instead of just, throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to see what makes it stick.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to create this user account, and I'm going to turn intercept on because I'm going to make a small modification. So I'm going to go ahead, click register, and it's going to have all the information that I had put in there, right? Here's my email, here's my password and repeat password.
And for
Security
those that don't
question, that's
know
part of
what
another
Interceptor
object.
is doing, is Interceptor stops in the context of that web browser through the proxy, and it doesn't send that command. It actually holds it for a second, right? That you can then make some decisions to take and change before you send them on. And that's what Gavin's doing here. Just for anybody that's not super familiar, that's what's happening there.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm like pausing that, and then I can make whatever changes I want to make. And this is really important because developers don't realize that hackers can do this. Developers always think, oh, I can just block it in the client side, and there's no way you can make a custom HTTP request. What's also kind of funny is I can right click and copy as a curl command, and then it'll copy, everything that I'm trying to do here is something that I can just paste into my terminal, and then it'll make a curl command or a request of some sort. So in here, because we saw the user object with that role deluxe, let's go ahead and see if we can add in our own role. So in this case, I'm going to try admin. And then I'm going to do a comma and a quote just to make it all look nice. So this is the only little piece that I added in. I'm going to go ahead, turn off intercept. It's going to create, we see, this is also a thing that I like about Juice Shop. It gives you instant feedback. So if you found something, it tells you. So it says here, hey, I registered a user with admin privileges. If I look at the history and I see, hey, here's my post request. That's for security answers. Here's my post request for users. We can even see that, hey, this has been edited. I'll go ahead and highlight this pink so that if I ever need to find it again, I can. I can sort by highlighted by clicking on this filter settings up at the top, show only highlighted items, apply and close. So if I ever get lost, I can always go back to that same request in Burp. So let's take a look at what this has. So here's our edited, that's the original request. Here's our edited request where we added in admin. And we can see when we create a new account, the server actually acknowledges that we set our role to admin. So that's really cool. This is mass assignment. This has gotten me a couple of critical vulnerabilities in internal applications because, again, the developers got a little lazy and they thought, oh, nobody's going to ask for this directly. I'm that person. I'm going to ask for that directly.
While we're chatting real quick for a second, you can bring up this chat. I was asking, because patch is less used, do you find it to be more exploitable as a lesser known or used verb?
That's a good question. So as patch is less used, do I find it less or more exploitable? The answer is no. And the reason is because of the way that applications are made. We have certain, conventions. So they're not hard and fast rules. You can change things to however you want it to be. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a patch. It could be a post. It could be a put. You can even make it a get. And this is called a state changing get request. That really frustrates other developers if you try to do that. So that's kind of why we try to follow these conventions. But it's not that, these methods are any different from each other.
And it goes back to your answer to the first question, which was that, which goes back to that first question, which was basically you could throw spaghetti at the wall, but what you try to do is be more application context aware. And if the developer has chosen to use this, then that's the path for that. And this, right? Is it fair how those two are somewhat interconnected? Yeah.
100%. 100%. I need to understand the application in its own context instead of, trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Or sometimes I'll see a lot of juniors, they'll just run a scan and the scan won't yield any interesting results. And the reason is because they don't respect the way that the application was built. And they're just kind of, just trying to do the same thing over and over again. Yep. Awesome. So let's go ahead and log in. So ASDF, oops. This is on me, ASDF at asdf.com. Oh, this is causing some issues. Ooh, that's not good. Well,
Yeah,
this is
that's not
the problem with live demos. Let's see what's happening.
Proxy crash. While he's fixing his stuff, basically what he's going to be doing is using that username and admin credential to sign back in and now be an authenticated user, I would wager. But
Yep.
right now he's in proxy hell, and that is the awesomeness of live demos. So let's go over some of the stuff just to pivot real quick. Dom, your thoughts on the process-centric aspect of this, and why just the two questions we've had have already kind of given an example of what Gavin's been talking about. But what are your thoughts so far on the show since we're on pivot mode?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the right way, but it's also a more powerful way, right? Being able to understand what you're actually looking at, take the time to understand the target. I think it's probably going to save you a lot of time. I'd imagine once you build that process and are efficient at it. But then it's precision, it's surgical, right? You know what you're going to attack, and you know how you've decided what you're going to attack, and you're able to operate that way. So I actually really like this approach. OWASP top 10 scanners are kind of fun. Like, throw it at something if you're poking around. It works pretty well on the damn vulnerable web app. If you're familiar with that one, similar to Juice Shop, super ugly app you use for this purpose.
What's funny is I've been watching how quickly he can run through an intercept there. It's fun. We're getting to see the back end. No, but one of the things,
once you get
if you're not,
efficient at
he's
it,
signed
it's real
in now,
quick.
so we can get back to him. He got really quick.
There we go.
Gavin, you did 4 of those in 32 seconds, man. It's just mind-boggling. Anyway,
you can tell I've done this before.
Just once or twice.
Yeah.
All right,
I've had
proxies healed.
So sometimes what I like to do is little powwows. So I'll do a screen share with the junior, and we'll sit for 4 hours, and they'll watch me go through and do my testing. I have to consciously slow down my process because I know what I'm looking for, and so I just go da 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 da. It's like that scene from The Matrix where they're showing all the code, and he says, "Can you read all that?" It's like, "Oh yeah, but I don't even see code anymore, right? Like there's girl, boy, blue hair, and so." It's really
nice rescue.
It's really fascinating when you see people who are like completely plugged in. So this is why I try to take the time and kind of explain my process as I go through it, because I find that there are 2 major types of testers. There are people who have a systematic approach like I do, and then there are people who kind of go for the throat. And so those people are really good at what they do. Horrible teachers. Absolutely horrible, because it's
man. I feel seen
how
right
do you
now.
know?
I feel seen right now.
Yeah, right. Hey, how did you know to look for that? Oh, I just did.
Yeah, I saw it.
How could I learn how to explain?
Elaborate.
Just figure it out.
All right. Fair.
Yeah.
All right, you're
It's
back
like,
in. You're signed in as your admin. So let's continue.
So I'm actually gonna pause here. That's the process of application mapping. So you're going to go through the entire application. You're going to click on everything, press every button, insert into every input field. Over time, we're going to build out kind of a target tab in Burp. And this is going to be the basis of our application map. So if you go to target, you're going to see a whole bunch of information in here that Burp is seeing, right? So there's that API users. We have every post request. So what I like to do is try to organize this and use this as a way for me to navigate through the application, kind of understand how things connect. So here I'll press Control A, I'll press Control C. So let's highlight all, copy it, and then I'll dump it into Excel. There's a running joke at a previous company where people were saying that I just hack with Excel, and unfortunately they're not wrong. But Excel is a very useful tool. If you're using Linux, you can do this on LibreOffice. It's basically you just want to build out this table. So I'll press Control V to paste in all this information. So this is all the information off of that target tab. Now, I like to create a table, so I'm going to give this thing some headers. So this is going to be our domain. This is going to be our method. This is our path. This one, how it says true, this is just completely junk, so we can delete that. This is our response code. This is our size, so the size of the information that's returned back to us. And then this is our type, so the type of file. And then these last three, we can just go ahead and delete. I'm going to add a couple more. So tests, so these are the tests that I'm going to want to run. Test results, and then notes. So I'm going to expand that a little bit, expand that, and there we go. Expand the path a little bit. So what I like about Excel, again, you can do this in Google Sheets or LibreOffice. I go to Insert, Table, OK, and I can start filtering. So I see a lot of these socket.ios. This is for WebSockets. This is how, Juice Shop knows that I found a flag. So I'm just going to go ahead and filter all of these out. So it does not contain socket.io. Okay. And those are all gone. So now I have a bunch of information. Let me go ahead and filter out all of the scripts. So I can go through and identify, hey, here's all the API endpoints. What are some tests that I would want to try? So here we have REST user login. So maybe this is somewhere where I would want to try, SQL injection. And then I can write a note. So this allows users to log in. Feedbacks, we already found that we might be able to script this. So maybe bypass CAPTCHA, if I can spell that right.
I like CapChat.
CapChat's great.
Bypass CapChat.
So we can do that unauthed. Security answers, security questions. Not really anything interesting there. API users, so this allows us to create a user. And this is where we tested that mass assignment. And we can even say, hey, I did find mass assignment. Now, very similar to what I do with the repeater tabs, I like to put a little symbol. So here's just a little bang, and I'll show you why I do that. So I'll just do mass assignment found, expand that a little bit more. There's some other stuff. So you'll notice, users 22, users 23. So this, let me see, can I see other
And just
profiles?
for everybody's listening, this got generated in this targets tab because you had proxy listening as you were clicking through all the things as you suggested in the very beginning, right? So the first step in the process
Exactly.
of enumeration, clicking and interacting, forced all of these API calls to happen so you could discover the places where things were happening. Just for those watching at home,
Right.
a little bit of clarification of how we got to where we are and why this target tab was so enumerated.
Exactly. Step one, open up Burp, run a proxy or run the browser through the proxy. And then as you go through, Burp just passively collects all this information. So it's very useful. What I'll usually do is I'll fill out, most of this kind of sheet. It gives me an idea of things that I want to test, and then I can apply some filters. So if I remove everything that has blanks, here's all the tests that I would want to run. I can also ignore the tests that I have ran already. So I'll just deselect all, only select blanks. So here's all the tests that I need to run. I haven't done any of these yet. And so as I go through and update it, I can update my notes and I'll have an idea of like, okay, how far along on this assessment am I?
It also just became very clear to me that this becomes your master operations sheet once you have created it, because now it
Exactly.
gives you, here's all the pieces. I can lump them together. I can add another column to add some extra context if I needed to. And then it also gives me the place where you can go look at your juniors and see what they did and didn't test based on the endpoints they found, comparative to your endpoints. So this is the normalizing piece for you in your process, right? Excel becomes that normalization
Exactly.
function. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
What I also like about this is, 6 months later, if a client comes back and says, hey, a bug bounty hunter came back to me and they said that they found this issue. Did you find this? Did you even test for this? And I can look back at this sheet again, 6 months ago. I've already tested a whole bunch of applications. Your app is like out of my head. I can look at this and say, yeah, I tested it and here's what I found, or no, I didn't test it and here's why. So I can always go into more details.
Makes sense.
So I'm going to clear a lot of these filters, and I'm going to show you why I did this little bang here. Because at the end of the assessment, if I need to write up all my findings, I can go ahead, do a search, and I'll just put, that exclamation point, and I can find all of the tests that have positive results. So here's all of my findings. And so that master operations sheet is now my finding list. So step 1, go through the application like a regular user. Step 2, do your application mapping, press every button, test every input field. Step 3, build out this application map and then start filling it out with information that's going to be relevant. And then it'll also help you find things that maybe you didn't see while you were going through manually with the application map, but Burp definitely found it, and it's going to tell you, hey, here's an endpoint that might be interesting. So the last little bit that I want to cover, because we're getting pretty close to time, is how do I threat model an application and prioritize, my findings? So for example, if I have an application that's going to take me a full month to get full coverage on this application, but they're only going to give me a week to look at it, I need to prioritize. And so the way that I prioritize is broken down into these 5 systems. So first and foremost, can I shell the system? Can I get remote code execution? Can I steal your source code? And then that makes my test a whole lot easier.
100%. Yeah.
What's great about this is that there's only really about 6 ways that you can shell a system. And so the first thing you're going to look for is like, hey, of these 6 ways, can I just go through, yep, that doesn't exist, that doesn't exist, that doesn't exist. Can I upload a file? Is there an opportunity for command injection, anything like file inclusion? And so I, as a senior tester, if I look at that and I see, okay, that's not part of the functionality of this application, I can't shell the system. So priority 2, can I steal all the data? Now, little fun tidbit. Stealing data is my favorite thing to do. I love stealing data. I do it through IDOR. I do it through mass assignment. It is so much fun. So I spend a lot of time on this. Oh yeah, I get so expressive. Stealing the data. This is going to be things like SQL injection, IDOR. If you don't know what IDOR is, it's insecure direct object reference. So that means that, hey, I know that you have a debug panel, but I can't actually access your debug panel through the regular UI. What if I just say get example.com/debug panel? And now I have access to it. And it's because I directly access that resource and you didn't stop me. So that's another way that you look for, again, I'm user number 26. What is user number 25? Can I look at their stuff?
Yeah,
Can I
yeah.
change that
You know who
value?
explains that the best, I thought? Alyssa Miller did Alyssa Knight did an explanation about it. And she said, imagine I drive up to a nightclub and I drive a horrible, old, ratty, beat up car and I park it and I get my valet ticket and it says 12. And the next guy pulls up in a Lamborghini and he gets 13. I simply go around the corner with a magic marker and change it to 13, bring it back to the valet, and boy, I've got a Lambo. And so it's a great example. Anyway, sorry, tangent.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I found this. It was a critical finding on a client application a number of years ago. It was a sales platform, very similar to Salesforce, but not Salesforce.
Good distinction.
I found, well, it was interesting how they built it because I found out that I can change my profile number. So, okay, I'm number 26. Let me check number 25. And then I can see somebody else's profile information. I can get, it was a multi-tenant application, which means my competitors are using the same application. So I can download all of my competitors' information. So I stole, it was probably about 60,000 user accounts, 300,000 sales leads. So I had all of my sales leads. I had all of their sales leads. So I can try and poach,
It's a fast
their
way
customers.
to grow your business.
And that's why I love stealing data.
True story. True story. And then after
Priority
steal the
number
data,
3.
what's the difference? Yeah, that's all the data means you're going to hit the big win across the board. What's the delineation in some of the data? Is that just a hierarchical drop from the first one?
And that's exactly it. So maybe I can't access another tenant in the application, but can I steal some of the data? Stuff that I'm not supposed to have access to. Configuration information, admin information, sometimes credentials. So I'll find AWS credentials in a JavaScript file, given to me in the application. And now I've turned this application pen test into a cloud pen test. So I log in. What kind of privileges do I have with these credentials? Oh, I have admin. So now I have complete control over your entire cloud environment, and that gets me shell access to the system. So it's a lot of fun. Sometimes I'll try to steal information from other users. Maybe I can do something like privilege escalation, and that kind of ties into number 4. Maybe I can't steal data, but can I start affecting other users? Can I do things like cross-site scripting or CSRF? Can I get access to unauthorized functions? And then level 5 is best practices. So these are going to be your low and informational findings, which are good to have and let your client know about, but they're not going to get you, the cool Uber exploits that you're really looking for.
Sure.
So if you're looking for what is the whole point of this talk, please take a screenshot of this slide, because this is essentially my testing process in a nutshell. So with that, that's all I have for you guys today. For more information, again, take a look at my YouTube channel, NetSec Explained. Also, feel free to reach out to us at GlitchSecure. My email is gavin@glitchsecure.com. We do both penetration testing and continuous testing. So this process, we found ways to automate it, and we've attached a lot of really powerful tools so that you can just automatically assess your environment. So
I'll also add of note that we are doing a bit of a data project, myself, Jason Slagle, Tom Lawrence, and a few others, where we're offering somewhat of a pitch, more of us doing some probative data gathering of a bunch of MSPs. And one of those was GlitchSecure. And they are still to date the only MSP that has sent me 165,000 responses that said, I'm a little teacup, as a response to my scanning. So kudos to y'all for having some awareness of your attack surface enumeration. It's awesome.
That's a
Gavin, you're such
429,
a
right?
rock star. I'm so excited to have you here, and I hope people gain something from this. You're an amazing teacher and obviously an amazing practitioner. And we'd love to have you back to talk about some other things in the future. And if y'all like him, please let us know in the comments and also by sharing this video. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Gavin, thank you so much for joining us. That was fantastic. And yeah, if you're going to write web apps, make sure you write them correctly, or Gavin's going to find them. That's our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to join us next week. And speaking of Tom and Jason, they're going to be on the show, and we're going to talk about the hackening. So that should be pretty cool. And I think I got all the housekeeping and bidding in the show. So thanks so much. We'll see you next week.